Yeah, you get these long introductions when you're getting too old. So, yeah, notice that. Great to be here. Thanks to Foundation to host us here in this beautiful place. Almost the same audience, but some difference though. Welcome to my ambassador of the Netherlands here in Spain. Great that you could also join us. And we're going to talk about the future of museums this afternoon. First, I want to show you something else, which is a new app. It's called DAL-E. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you've tried it. It's an artificial intelligence app. So what it does, it creates images, so photo-like images, or generates art in any style that you would like. So if you want to compose a picture like Van Gogh or like Picasso, you can do so with this app. And it's really easy. You just write down what you want to see. So, and then the app will give you the image. For instance, you can write down a dog eating a banana. And then you get a dog eating a banana. Or you write, I would like an oil pastel drawing of an annoyed cat in a spaceship. And that will give you that. It's interesting, the app does not use existing images, but it builds up the images from pixels using the information on the web, so, which is just about all of our collective knowledge. Which means that you could also use the app as an oracle. You can ask it about the future. So you can ask, give us an image of the museum of the future. And this is what it comes back with. An empty, white, silent hall with a lost child and a little blob. Not exactly what I hoped for. Neither did you, I suppose. So it seems like we got a lot of work ahead of us this afternoon. So let's start with looking at our own exhibitions. The exhibition part of our institutes, the part that everyone knows best. And needless to say, the core objective of our museums is to reach out to an ever-growing and diverse audience. It's part of our statutory mandate, it's our mission, it's our way to make an impact. So with this in mind, we recently built a whole new museum in Leiden, which opened in 2019. And doing so, there were a few important questions that we need to answer. Who's it for? What's it about? And what does it do? First of all, we need to decide who are we going to build this new museum for. So are we going to make it for the traditional museum public that you see on the upper right, or for academics, or for other biologists, or for families? And we decided that we wanted to make a museum for families. Well, the museum for families is not a very clear-cut concept either, in the sense that families differ a lot. You have mothers, you've got fathers, you've got grandparents, big children, small children, boys and girls. It's not a very homogeneous group. And also the level of education differs, the museum interests differ. But what makes a family museum is that you aim for families to experience the museum together, to do and do things together, and to talk about it. So conversation is the main objective of a family museum. And to make that possible, you offer them stories, experiences. Families use the museum to reinforce previous experiences, spend quality time together, and learn together. And how does that work? Learn. You may remember the wonderful film Matilda, based on a Roald Dahl book. In the movie, Matilda is a little girl, goes to school where the teacher that looks like a former East German shot put champion has this motto over the blackboard: if you're having fun, you're not learning. Well, thankfully, we know from science that the opposite is true. When you're touched emotionally, if you see something or hear something that makes you laugh or that makes your skin crawl, then you want to know more about it. Learning goes through the heart, not through the head. So in our museum, we offer our visitors experiences, show them the beauty of nature, we show them the variety, the ingenuity of animals and plants, to touch their hearts. And that answers the second question. What is it about? What is it that you would like your visitor to experience, to learn in your museum? Our goal with the museum is to make every visitor fall in love with nature, so that after leaving the museum, they feel different about nature and want to preserve it. So speaking about the future of museums, the first goal for me would be to make our visitors fall in love with nature. The former Naturalis Museum, the one this new museum replaces, answered the question, what is it about, differently. It wanted to teach the visitors what evolution is and how evolution works. That museum was opened in 1998, so only 20 years before this one. So what changed in 20 years? And I guess the answer is our planet. 5 years ago, in 2017, German scientists reported that the number of insects in Germany had declined by 75% since 1989. In the Netherlands, we repeated the study with the same results, a decline of 75% in only a few decades. And I remember how shocked we were, shocked by the absurd high percentage, but even more shocked by the fact that we had not known. I mean, we are the National Natural History Museum. We should have known, but we did not, absorbed as we were in our eminent research in every possible field, in every possible outpost in the world. But we had missed the disaster happening right under our nose. After it had sunk in, everything changed. We realized that the impact of the biodiversity crisis would be even more devastating than the climate crisis, and that we needed to act. At about the same time, Extinction Rebellion came to the museum. They came to all the major museums in Europe, and the first event was a die-in at the Naturalis Museum in London. I like that, a die-in. We had a little more time to prepare ourselves, and when they came, we offered them the museum to use for their discussions and preparations. I know the same happened in Berlin, where they still gather on Fridays. And with Extinction Rebellion came other organizations, Youngsters for Climate and Green Youth fractions of political parties, etc., etc. We bring them all in and we accommodate them. Our museum, aimed at families, does not satisfy activist young people who are desperate as they see the world being traded away and who are feeling powerless, as all the power lies in the hands of old men and women. So, what can we offer them? The first thing we have to offer is our science. They are activists, but they want to get it right. They want everything they say to be founded in science, and that science we could offer them. So we got our scientists to interact with them, and together we drew up a manifest that they presented to the government. They provided the goals and they provided the words, and we provided the science. They were happy with this cooperation, and so were our scientists. These meetings are still going on, but we felt it was not enough. The main problem, like I said, is that young people feel that they have no power, no position. So we decided that we should set up a new organization that they can just run the way they want it to run. And we called it Sapiens. Sapiens is a unique concept that brings together elements of a museum, a laboratory, a workshop, and a think tank to address the enormous questions that the climate and biodiversity crisis poses. Naturalis provides historical and current knowledge about the state of biodiversity, and we help design the exhibitions. The Free University of Amsterdam provides research and students working on projects with a broad social perspective, and the University of Applied Sciences helps organizing the labs. But the young people are in the lead. They choose what they want to do and how to do it. They can or they cannot tap into our knowledge, and we do not interfere. Sapiens is built on the most Anthropocene, the most expensive place in the Netherlands, in the Amsterdam Business District, and it will open next year. So our next goal on our Futures for Museums list would be support the energy, urgency, and activism of young people. So let's move to the impact of our collections and science. We all have wonderful collections in our institutes, millions and millions of plants, animals, minerals, and fossils. And if we make a map of the collections in this world, they may amount to 3.5 billion objects. And that's great. But if we look at the number of unique species in those collections, we see that we have identified so far only 2 million species. That sounds like a lot, but it's probably only about 10% of all species on Earth. And then I'm talking about multicellular species. Biologists estimate the number of multicellular species on this planet at around 20 million. So we found only 10%, and we've been at it for about 400 years. So you can imagine how long it's going to take us to find the other 90%. So it seems that we're not embracing nature fast enough. We desperately need a new deal to scale up species discovery and species interaction. We need to know so much more. Now, fortunately, technology has improved greatly, and we can now use environmental DNA, data sciences, artificial intelligence, next to our more traditional disciplines. Using that knowledge and that technology, we can speed up the identification of species tremendously. And we need to. The rate at which species disappear is alarming and a whole lot faster than we are identifying them. You may ask, why is this lack of knowledge a problem? Well, I guess, most simply put, if we don't know what we have, how can we preserve it? And we're not only talking about species that live in the deep seas or in very remote areas. Even in the Netherlands, that's one of the best sampled countries in the world, there are thousands of species we still need to find. In the Netherlands, we've started a 5-year project in which we will collect and identify all multicellular species, take their genetic fingerprint, and digitize all corresponding information. So we're now at 60%, so in 3 years, we should reach 100%, finding thousands of new species in the process. The only way we can do this so quickly is by involving amateur scientists and the general public. They help with the sampling, and they make millions of observations, pictures, sound recordings in the field. Citizen science has become extremely important for us. I think this is one of the most challenging goals for our natural history museums, to speed up the identification of species in our own country and abroad, and to involve the broader public. When we have created these collections of genetically identified species, we need to think about how do we increase the impact of those collections. Collections are only valuable if they're used by scientists, used by policymakers, preferably from all over the world. Knowing all the species that exist is one thing, but what you really need for a biodiversity policy is to understand how biodiversity changes. You need biodiversity monitoring. Monitoring the changes in space and in time Only then we can predict how biodiversity will develop in our countries and see which policies work and which don't. Monitoring biodiversity is now done mainly by nature conservation organizations like the WWF, and their work is excellent, but it takes only into account certain species and is not aimed at the regional dynamics of changing ecosystems. The Biodiversity Genomics Europe project, that we talked about a little bit this morning, has the overriding aim of accelerating the use of genomic science to monitor biodiversity change and to guide interventions to address its decline. What it then intends to do is develop monitoring tools that will enable us in Europe to monitor changes in biodiversity. So invasive species, species that disappear, species that move because of climate change, etc., etc. These are the tools that Europe needs to put in its toolbox for biodiversity policy. Natural history museums are destined to play a central role in that development. And what I hope for is that in the near future we are capable to monitor regional changes in biodiversity on almost a daily basis. Like the weather men and women we see after the daily news, you can imagine us explaining the state of biodiversity every evening. Well, maybe that's a little bit too much, but at least we should be able to do it on a yearly basis. So one of the goals for our museums would be to become the weathermen of biodiversity. When we think about museums' collections, we usually think about the physical objects. And I'm convinced that the physical objects will only become more important in the next decades. Because over time, we've always seen that physical objects hold information that we can decipher using new technologies. Our 19th century scientists who built many of our collections had no idea that one day we would be able to extract DNA from these plants and animals, that the geodata would give us insight in the movement and spread of species, and climate scientists would track the pathways of spreading and retreating plants. Every 10 years, new technology becomes available that generates new information from our physical objects. And all of that information together, we need to share digitally. If we aspire for our collections to partake in the realm of open digital science and deliver impact at scale, we must move them into the digital space. Essentially, what this means is to transform our physical objects into their research equivalent digital entities, their digital surrogates, their digital twins. The scientific value of a biological specimen lies in the sum of the information that can be extracted from it. So a holistic digitization process aims to deliver a digital twin of the physical object that conveys all the available specimen-derived information. Digital transformation of natural science collection goes above and beyond the notion of imaging objects and making them available online. It includes a shift in the modus operandi of our organization, a shift that recognizes the digital twin of the physical object as a nexus for equitable sharing of scientific and cultural value. Therefore, our next goal should be to build a European infrastructure containing digital twins of all species and make it available for science, policy, and the general public. And that is what DISCO, European Infrastructure for Natural History Collections, is aiming for. Many of you are already part of this exciting project that is set up by 170 institutions in 23 countries. It's a new frontier for our institutions. And that brings me to the end of this presentation and back to the title of this keynote, The Future of Our Museums. That future is not in the museum, it is outside our buildings, in the middle of society, and in the cloud. And sure, visitors will keep coming to our museums to learn and to enjoy themselves. And like Cupid, we will shoot our arrows at them to make them fall in love with nature. But I'm convinced that the future of our museums needs to be in a broader and deeper connection with society, with policymakers, with farmers, with bankers, with supermarkets, spatial planners, and that is a big job. But we're not alone. We have the full support of the European Commission. The Green Deal is a truly aspirational program, and I'm sure that our colleagues outside Europe are envious of that support. For us Europeans, it not only gives us access to resources, it also gives us the responsibility to connect fully to this program with the whole of our organizations and reinforce it as much as possible. We can do that through our national governments and also directly working with the European Commission. So to conclude, the future of our museums is not this. It's this and this. It's working with schools, working with citizen scientists, working with nature conservationists, working with agriculture organizations, with big finance, with industry. Working in natural reserves, but also in agricultural areas and in our cities. We have to come out of our institutes and connect to society on every level. Nationally, to ensure that we get a thorough knowledge of our own country's biodiversity and understand all the needs of parties involved, and we need to do that in a record time. And internationally, we need to bring our science and our collection information together and bring them in the digital realm to connect with the world. Giving scientists, but also policymakers, a fighting chance when we want to change the way this world is heading. Fighting the biodiversity crisis is not something that we can do alone. We need everyone to bring their resources together and divide the tasks among us. The technology is there, politicians have put a Green Deal together. Now it's up to us to claim our place and get everybody moving. The future of our institutions is to work and to stand together. Thank you so much.
Questions? Any questions?
Preguntas. Sí, se baja. Sí, no, te pregunto.
I wanted to ask you if you could please tell us a little bit more about the concept of the digital twin and what is the purpose of it? How would it really enhance and lead you to the goals that you explained you were going towards?
Yes, that's an interesting question. Well, to me, the digital twin is that we digitally try to connect all the information that we have to a physical object. So obviously, if you digitize, say, a beetle, like you saw, then we make a picture, a 2D picture, or maybe even a 3D picture, and you tell where it was found and by whom, etc. But then there's also the genetic information that you could share. You could also tell where it was found and in connection with other species there. Or maybe even you found when you were doing your genomic research that you found genomic traces of other species as well. So in one object there's usually a lot of information in the object itself and connected to the object, like research papers, like information about the objects, about the place where it's found. So what you build is like a cloud of information, all connected to that specimen. And so that specimen becomes the digital twin of the physical object, and the digital twin that has just as much information as the physical object has in your museum, because in a museum all that information is also available, but usually not when you just digitize it. So building that cloud of information around that object makes it a digital twin of all the knowledge that is available in your institute and in the minds and in the papers of the scientists. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm really interested in the Sapiens workshop you presented.
Right.
Why is it placed in the banking district? What kind of outreach purposes are there behind?
Well, there were a couple of ideas behind it. One was that usually what happens when these new initiatives arise, they are being located somewhere a little bit outside the city where it's cheap and where it's but also very difficult to get to. So we felt that if we wanted this new institute to give it the place that it truly deserves, it should be somewhere where it would be easily reached in the center of town. And it seemed kind of interesting to do it at the most Anthropocene place of the Netherlands. It's I mean, it's all high rises and banks and all that, so that's kind of interesting. And also, we hoped that by placing it there, that young professionals from everybody who works in that district, so lawyers and all that, would more easily start working together with Sapiens, because that would be the idea. The idea would be that young people come together and work on solutions for whatever they decide that they want to find solutions for. And they do that by using science, but also they do that by bringing a group of young people together that is very different in where they come from. So they can be students, they can be professionals working at that bank, they can be artists, they can come from all different backgrounds. And we feel that especially when it comes to professionals, so young people that are going to be important in our society, it would be very good for them, for their development, to be engaged in programs like that. And it's easy for them when it's in Amsterdam, it's even easier for them when it's in a business district than if it would be in some remote place. So we try to find them. We try to find the bankers and the insurance people and to make it very clear that actually we're building it for them. And we expect that the thing is, when you start working for companies like KPMG and a bank, I think we've all been there. When you start working there, you're just yourself, and then when you work there for 3 months, you're part of the organization. You dress like the organization, you think like the organization. And especially when you just start, it would be so beneficial to talk to other people about your work, to hear different stories or see different approaches. We feel that especially for young professionals, it would be very beneficial to be enrolled in programs like Sapiens. So we try to go where they are. Bruno. Yeah.
No, I just would like to be back to the digital twin and tell a comment. I am sure you agree with that comment in advance. Words have a sense, and twin means that you have two things, the digital and the real one. And we have not to forget about the real one. And one of the twin has not to kill the other one, as Romulus and Remus story at the beginning of Rome. This means that we have to really keep the link with a real object, because people also are coming in the museum to see real things and not to see the twins. If you look at the paintings in front of us, you enjoy them or not, but because they are real, not because they are twins. So I am sure you agree with that.
Fully
And your
agree,
last picture about the future of the museum in front of an empty room is a very, very good illustration of that. We need to have a lot of real things in our museum, maybe to be back to the 19th century where we were showing to the public the richness of our collections. This is something that sometimes we have forgotten, at least partly.
Well, I fully agree, and taking that back to the beginning, when I said that for me the best way to reach somebody is emotion. Real objects give that emotion. Digital objects hardly ever do. So digital twins are for science and for policy and to connect to the rest of the world, but that feeling of really engaging with nature, that's, you either have to do that outside in the forest or in our museums and see the real stuff. Yeah,
Observation is the key word.
that's right.
To learn to observe.
Yeah, yeah. Coffee, right.